Hey everybody, thanks for stopping by. I hope everybody's doing well out there today. This is the Polk Monitor XT60. Please do hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed so you can catch more videos like this as I do post them. Also, please do check out the description section below where I often put more information about whatever it is I'm talking about in the video. And if I had to change your mind, change your heart, or if I potentially forgot to mention something, it'll be in that description. There is also links in there, so check it out. And if you have any questions or comments or you own this speaker, I'd love to hear about it. Put it in that comment section below. Now back to the Polk XT60. All these numbers that are in here. There's the XT60, the XT70, and the XT90. This is the XT60 with the grill on. I've kind of put it on loosely just for show. The grill is kind of like a lightish black color. You know how when you have a black t-shirt and you wash it too many times, it turns into this. So that's the only way that I could explain this color, is it's kind of like washed out, faded black, almost gray, but not really gray. Anyway, that's what the grill looks like. And the grill's kind of, it's kind of thin, it's kind of flimsy, but I mean, look, this is a $200 speaker, so can't expect too much, but I am actually really surprised. The speaker does look really nice on the exterior, but first I'm gonna get into the specifications. This tweeter is a 1-inch Terylene dome tweeter, and I believe, off the top of my head, that's the same name for the tweeter that's in the Polk Signature series, which is, what was it called again? The ES60 that I have a review of, so do check that out as well. That's a really nice sounding speaker, large speaker too. But I think it's the same name for the tweeter, even though the color of the tweeter looks different. The woofers on this are a 6.5-inch custom paper. So actually, this is the woofer that's going to be powered from your receiver or amplifier or stereo integrated amp, whatever it might be. This one's going to be powered, and these two over here are the passive radiators, which are two 6.5s. Now the passive radiator is only going to move when this woofer here moves, so otherwise they're not going to move at all. The first thing that I want to point out is, to my eyes, this looks like some type of a long throw woofer with whatever they call it, a high roll surround or a high excursion woofer, whatever it might be called, but it does look like some type of long throw woofer. The surrounds over here are very thick, they're also very soft, and this woofer does move a lot, especially with the right music and the right amplification. When this woofer gets moving, then these passive radiators move as well. So I'm actually, pretty surprised by how well the passive radiators move on this. Everything, these surrounds are nice and soft. So back to the specs. It says that the overall frequency response is 38 Hertz in the bass to 40 kilohertz in the treble. And then it says the frequency response with what looks like a -3 decibel limit, I do have the wrong glasses on, is 43 hertz to 26 kilohertz. The recommended amplifier power is 25 watts to 200 watts, and the amplifier output compatibility is rated at 4 ohms. And then it says the minimum impedance is 4.4 ohms. So the minimum impedance is 4.4 ohms. So I'm wondering if this speaker is actually a 8 ohm speaker or a 6 ohm speaker, because an 8 ohm speaker at times most likely is going to hit 4 ohms somewhere in the frequency range. It's going to dip. So, what is this really? Is this a 4 ohm speaker, or is this an 8 ohm speaker or a 6 ohm speaker? Because again, it says minimum impedance, but yet the amplifier output compatibility is 4 ohms, so it's kind of strangely worded. Then the sensitivity is 86 decibels. The tweeter mid-range crossover is at 2,200 hertz. So at 2,200 hertz is where the signal is going to be split. So everything over 2,200 is going to go up to the tweeter, and then below it's going to go to this woofer. And of course, when this woofer moves, then it's going to move the passive radiators to kind of enforce some of that like lower rumble bass. And the speaker is also high-res certified. I do want to point out the model up, which is the XT70. It adds another 6.5-inch woofer, so there's going to be 2 of these that are going to be powered from your amplifier or receiver. And then it upgrades these 2 passive radiators to 8-inch passive radiators. And the frequency response on that, it drops down just a little bit. Looks like it's about 3 hertz lower. It says 35 hertz. But otherwise, it's pretty close with everything else. It's pretty close. It looks like the sensitivity on it is 89 decibels, and the minimum impedance is 4 ohms instead of 4.4 ohms. And if I didn't say 4.4 ohms before, I apologize. I just don't remember if I did or not. And it looks like the crossover on that one is going to cross over at 2.7 kilohertz instead of 2.2 kilohertz. So kind of interesting, because this one crosses over at 2.2 kilohertz. So everything 2.2 and up is going to go to the tweeter again, and everything 2.2 and under is going to go to this woofer. Now with that said, I am going to go over my notes and the issues that I have with this, and I'm going to speculate because I believe that the XT70 is going to cure those issues. That's just, speculation based on what it brings to the table and what it's saying over here. So here's a quick look at those specs off of this, because I've noticed sometimes that when I read these owner's manuals, sometimes the actual website says something different. So hopefully that's focused and you're able to see it. Or sometimes I think that the manufacturers make changes after they print this or whatever. So let's get into the speaker. So this speaker I think is pretty nice looking, especially for $200 per speaker. At $200, you really can't expect that much out of a tower. I like the bass. I like how it has this. See, I could take my fingers and put them in here all around, so it's kind of like it's up on a little bit of like a pedestal. The exterior is just black. It doesn't have any type of a wood look, but it just looks a little bit bumpy or a little bit grainy. The binding posts are the typical posts that you get from Polk Audio. It's got that plastic screw-on types, but I mean overall they spin pretty well. I'm spinning it with one finger. It's pretty good. So they're pretty smooth overall. Again, especially for the price. I do want to point out that this speaker, I mean, it's not very heavy. As you can see, I got it scooped up. I got it scooped up in one arm. So I mean, it's not very heavy. So if you have a bad back and you're looking for some type of a tower speaker, I think it's, I think that it's probably a nice option. Of course, for people with a bad back, there's all different levels of bad back, which, this weight potentially might hurt somebody, but for me, it doesn't. I do curl 45-pound dumbbells, so to me, and I don't think that the weight was even listed on there, but it feels like it's probably about 30 pounds or so. I could be wrong, but it felt like about 30 pounds. Maybe it's 35 pounds or something, but that's what the weight feels like. So, that's pretty much the exterior. I do like the type of paint or whatever finish they put on it. It looks nice for the money. That's the point. And it feels pretty good. I mean, it doesn't sound like it's super hollow in here either or anything like that. It's just, I mean, overall seems pretty good. It comes with the bass already attached. So yeah, it comes with the bass, and it had these rubber feet. I mean, it was all ready to go in the box. So really all you got to do is take it out and you're good. All right, time for my notes. All right, so my notes are a little bit scattered as I had some random thoughts along the way as well. I'm going to try to piece these back together. The first thing to mention about the Polk Monitor XT60 is I felt like it's a bit of a power eater, and I realize it's rated at 86 decibels, but sometimes there's a speaker that's rated lower, but it doesn't seem like it plays that low. With this, I felt like I was really, really turning up the volume, and I had to turn up the volume a lot more than other speakers, and even some speakers that were kind of rated kind of close in the sensitivity. It just it just seems like it uses more power and it eats more power. The next thing that I want to mention is that this speaker is a warm sounding speaker, and I happen to really appreciate the sound of it, you know, especially the tweeter. It's nice to listen to a speaker that's not ear fatiguing. And I'm not saying that it sounds the greatest, so, you know, some people might not appreciate the sound. You know, we all have different hearing, we all have different equipment, and we all have different room acoustics. There's all kinds of things. The source material might be played on different devices, whatever it might be, that might, you know, change the outcome for all of us. But overall, it's not bright. It's not sharp. And I threw some really poor sounding recordings at it as well to see if I can, you know, enjoy those and listen to those. And overall, you know, again, I find it to be warm sounding in general, which is nice because I find that, you know, a lot of speakers on the market these days are just overly bright or overly sharp, at least for my taste. I did power this with the Onkyo RZ840, and that's 120 watts times 2 into 8 ohms in the pure mode. And it is rated down to 4 ohms. So, you know, whatever this is actually rated at, you know, it seemed okay with it. I powered this with the Rotel A14, which into 4 ohms is rated at 150 watts and into 8 ohms is rated at 80 watts. I did also power it with the Emotiva, which into 8 ohms is 300 watts, and I think 4 ohms was like 400 or 450, or maybe I'm just totally forgetting, but I believe that it had, you know, a lot of power, you know, but I did want to, you know, try it out with that. I also paired this to the Denon, the PMA, or yeah, I believe it's PMA800, all these number letter combinations. I paired it to that, and the Marantz 8006, I believe, and both of those are about the same wattage for those integrated amps. As far as the amplifier that you should probably choose to power this or receiver, whatever it is, I would suggest something that's neutral. And maybe if you have something that's bright, it might be okay with this as well, because I find that this calms down, you know, the amps that are a bit sharper or a bit brighter. So if you have an amp that's brighter and maybe you kind of been having a problem pairing it, you know, I think that this is probably a great option to try it out with. I wouldn't pair this to a warm amp though. I think that something warm would make this too warm. But I do appreciate the, you know, the warmth that this has, and I think that this speaker, maybe not this particular model, maybe the model up, the XT70, the Polk Monitor XT70, that might be a fantastic choice. And of course, it's going to be based on what I'm about to say. So I mentioned the woofer, and I mentioned that it looks like a long throw woofer to my eyes. It looks very thick, and the surround material is very soft and flexible, and it does move really well. During music that's aggressive music, you know, aggressive music, heavy metal music, that's what I'm talking about. Even some, you know, real heavy hard rock, I feel like it can be a bit of a traffic jam type of sound. And, you know, when I say that, what I mean is that, you know, kind of the frequencies, you know, the mid-range and the low frequencies are kind of getting, and I'm making this like a gritty motion with my hand, and that's exactly kind of like what I hear, where it kind of gets a little bit rough, okay? So with this speaker, I think it's better with music like jazz, it's better with easier rock, and I'm not going to say that it's bad with rock or that it's bad with metal, because it's not, because it does have huge advantages. But I think that if you're into heavy rock or metal, like for example, like listening to like Slipknot with this, it's a bit too much for the speaker. I just think that, and then that's when that like that jam starts up, like like a traffic jam, is that there's just too much music information hitting the speaker. It needs something a little bit less, a little bit easier, and I'm going to get into that a little bit more with some examples. So really anything that's jazz, anything that's a little bit easier rock, it's totally fine. The model over this, which adds the extra 6.5-inch woofer, which is also your mid-range as well, I think that might help to alleviate some of that traffic jam type of sound with more aggressive music. And I also think that it's going to help to just let out a little bit more vocals, and just overall make it a smoother experience. Because again, I really do appreciate the tweeter for how it sounds. I think that the tweeter really sounds very well balanced all the time. And again, it's definitely not the sharpest tweeter. It's not the brightest tweeter on the market. It's nothing like that. It's a very soft sounding tweeter. It more so sounds like a soft dome tweeter. I think that that's probably the easiest comparison, that if you've heard other soft dome tweeters, then this is what this sounds like. But it's very well balanced in that I don't listen to it and I'm thinking, well, it's strong in this frequency range, or it's weak in that frequency range. It just sounds very nicely balanced. The mid-range, I don't have any problems with the vocals. The vocals, snare drums seem pretty good overall as well. Cymbals when they come through, which is cymbals are basically, the tweeter and, a little bit of the mid-range, they sound fine. The tweeters, the cymbals aren't like running away. I don't feel like I'm listening to endless sizzle, endless shimmering, nothing like that. Overall, when that cymbals hit, the tweeter handles it and then lets it go. It's not like dragging it on throughout it, all eternity. So I like the tweeter. I like the mid-range, but again, it's that little bit of a jam that might occur sometimes, and make it a little bit rough sounding in that mid-range, with the bass. I powered this with several integrated amps, like I mentioned, plus the receiver, plus the other amp, plus the whatever. Anyway, so I powered it with like 5 different things, so I'm a little bit confused as to which moved it best. But I do remember in the beginning I had this hooked up to the Denon, it's the PMA800, but using those, like, this cone was moving and it was making these passive radiators move, and those are rated at what, 45 and 50 watts for those integrated amps. So the kick drums on a lot of different albums that I listened to, the kick drums were pretty impressive on this, and some of the music tracks, there's those little hits of like deep bass, and with this speaker I was able to hear it. Now if this speaker is being powered with more wattage, or an amp that has really good current, or however you want to look at it, you're going to get much better bass out of it, because you want to move these passive radiators. So to move these, again, you have to get this woofer going. That's really the key. Without this woofer moving, the bass just isn't going to be as good. It's going to go from like sounding like what a typical two-way speaker might sound. That's a 6.5-inch woofer. Maybe if you could picture like a bookshelf speaker with a 6.5-inch woofer that's maybe ported. Well, that's what this would probably sound like until you really get this woofer moving. Then it's just going to sound so much more full, so much more deep. So the bass for something this size, and especially for the price too, for the $200 price tag, and the price tag, yes, right now it's $200 per speaker, but this is Polk Audio. And Polk Audio runs a lot of sales over the course of a year or so. So, you know, this $200 could be, you know, $150 per speaker in the next, you know, few weeks or few months. Who knows? I mean, you know, this speaker just came out, but I'm sure that there's going to be sales coming up because the holidays are on the way. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few examples of some music tracks and, you know, what I thought of it, or the reason why I have it written down here. The band of Mice and Men has a song called Public Service Announcement, okay? And this song, at 1 minute, 10 seconds in, after the screaming of shut up happens, or right around the time of shut up, there's this like bass thud. And with a lot of speakers, that bass thud really isn't very audible, but it is on this. And of course, you know, the volume, you know, has to be set, you know, to kind of like a decent volume. I mean, you know, you might not hear it so well if it's very low, but you know, if the speaker's being played at a decent volume, then, you know, it should be good. And speaking of volume, I like this speaker more so at mid-range volumes, which I always explain mid-range is kind of like listening to a speaker and it sounds as loud as probably how loud I'm speaking. So if I'm in the room and I'm speaking with another person, I don't really have to like yell over the music. It's loud enough, but it's not so loud I have to yell over it. And I also like this at louder volumes, okay? Because at louder volumes with most of the amps, you know, that's really making these passive radiators move. And also it seems like some of the mid-range is coming through even better. But if you start to get too loud, you know, that's when the speaker can kind of start to lose it. Now back to that bass, another song is a song from Korn called Freak on a Leash. Freak on a Leash has lots of low bass in it as well, and you know, some speakers handle it well and some speakers don't. With this speaker, it's pretty good, especially for, you know, a 6.5-inch woofer. It does sound pretty good, but you know, you really do want to get these passive radiators moving a bit more. The band Revis made one CD and then disappeared, and it's one of my favorite, I guess, hard rock CDs or heavy rock. And it goes from, a lot of the songs go from, you know, kind of rocking to kind of acoustic. And it's a really nice sounding recording. I mean, I wish every recording that was with some type of rock band or metal band sounded this good. But with this speaker, I really enjoyed it still. And I was kind of worried that maybe the speaker, because it's, you know, so warm, I thought that maybe the speaker would make the recording not sound as good, but I mean, it sounds fine on it. And the last song that I'm going to mention is from Manu Katché. Manu Katché is a jazz musician. He's a drummer. His recordings are really excellent, and I really enjoy his albums. Anyway, there's one song called November 99, and November 99 is kind of laid back, but what I like about it is I really like the sound of the kick drum. And the kick drum really makes this woofer move, so it's kind of like a nice track to, you know, test out speakers with. So I was kind of impressed with that. So that's all I have. You know, to sum it up, I think that this is a really good speaker for the money. The model above it possibly might remedy the different issues that I had with it. I should just mention one more thing. You know, because of its overall size, it's a smaller speaker. And, you know, it's kind of smaller sounding. So it doesn't have a very large sound to it, but it's not quite as small sounding as it might look. It's kind of a bit more, you know, spacious than that. So just, you know, keep that in mind. Thanks to everyone for stopping by. I do appreciate you watching this, and have a great day.